Yes, locals. Yes. Problem fixed. All right, welcome to Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. I'm your host, Rich Paris, the People's Pundit. It's Monday, and it's a good day. So don't forget to like the videos if you like them. Smash the like button, share them far and wide. Subscribe. All right, so if you're on YouTube, mosey on over to Rumble, subscribe there. All the rest of it, like it. It really does help. It takes like a minute of your time, and it's a big help to us. So please go ahead and do so. Well, look, today's a very big day, and we're like waiting and expecting it. I just want to give think about the life achievement it is. Let me just stop for a second here. Oh, and by the way, we're going to have to make up a book club, so we'll talk about that later, but don't let me forget. Well, think about the life achievement it is. As I'm talking to Will Sharf on Twitter, messaging Will Sharf about, or X, whatever, about getting him on the show to talk about this decision, and thinking about the clip and playing with it, the last time he was on, and he's on CNN trying to explain what they're asking the court to do, and the anchor is just being a total twit, right? I mean, an idiot, just making up stuff that is not really at issue and isn't the argument of the Trump campaign. And what he was saying and arguing against her, it's not even bias, guys. It's not bias. People have to stop using that word. It's not a bias. It is a full-blown corruption. They are a force of deception and division in this country. Like, think about this case. Once again, the media has completely lied to the American public about something that is so significant in our society that they are actually a destructive force in our society. I mean, they're not playing any positive role or productive role at all. They're one of destruction, and they're becoming a real problem. They threaten the very system that we live under. And anyway, he's sitting there trying to explain this to her. This opinion is exactly what he said, and that's what so astonishing to me. And it's more than just this is what people, of course, Trump supporters want to run and say this is a victory for Trump. Look at even our own headline, admittedly, right? Because it is, of course, the way people will see this. And I kind of wish it wasn't, because when we discussed this on the show, when we brought Daniel Street on the show to talk about this issue, it's much more than a decision for Trump. Oh, hold on one second. This is a good thing. This is a good thing. Ooh, hold on one second, guys. Anyway, this is so much more than a decision for Trump. And we had Daniel Street on to talk about this. And it's I think maybe why I like to poll public opinion so much is because, and by the way, started the poll yesterday. I think why I like to poll public opinion so much is because in our system, the voter is sovereign. The elected representative of the executive branch, we only have one, is the president. Our Congress has already abdicated duty and obligation to conduct oversight, to do various things that enact the will of the sovereign voter. So the voters very sovereignty has been weakened dramatically, and there is an administrative state that does whatever the hell it wants. Every time Congress tries to hold them accountable, they have like literally 2 or 3 lines to escape any kind of punishment, any kind of accountability. I can't comment on an ongoing investigation. Out. I'm sorry, I can't disclose that. We may put at risk sources and methods. Out. And it's done. And it doesn't matter how crooked Christopher Wray is. It doesn't matter how crooked Jim Comey is. It doesn't matter how crooked John Brennan is. It doesn't matter how crooked James Clapper is. And by the way, I've talked to people who used to serve with Clapper years ago, and they said he went to Congress as a man of honor. I mean, he went to Washington, D.C. as a man of honor. And it's like a perfect, James Clapper is a perfect example of a military guy with good values and, trying to do the right thing, trying to be a force of positive change, becoming just completely corrupt and crooked. And it's sad, I mean, so there's nothing that can be done about these people in the mind of the voter except for the president. And I think that's the lesson of the Trump administration. And I've said this a lot, but it's worth repeating on a day like today. The lesson of the Trump administration for everybody should be that the state no longer recognizes your sovereignty. They don't care. If you elect someone that they don't like or threatens them in any way, they will spray his brains all over his wife's lap in front of everybody in a motorcade. They'll engage in a soft coup or worse if they have to get rid of him. They don't respect your God-given right under our system to decide who your leaders are. They just don't respect it. And sadly, again, because Congress abdicated that duty so much, the oversight role, period. I mean, it's not even so much, 100%, they don't do anything anymore. That leaves the president. Richard Burr, chairman of the committee that was supposed to be conducting a Republican from the Tar Heel state that I'm in right now, supposed to be conducting the, quote, if you can remember the media, the good investigation, because Devin Nunes, I don't know, was conducting the bad one. I mean, what they were trying to insinuate is that one will be credible and one will not be. Meanwhile, he's a totally bought off, paid for hack. They didn't tell you anything. They went along with the Russia hoax, which was in fact a hoax. Mr. Wolf, who is the longtime permanent fixture of that committee, is leaking to the New York Times and ends up getting caught under the Trump administration and indicted. Does anything really happen to him? No, because he loses his job. I mean, that's really it, right? I mean, that's really all that happened to him. Remember Reality Winner, all of that. I mean, nothing happens. Nothing serious. My God. I mean, if a Trumper leaked a SARS report, oh my God. That's like one of the worst things you could do, or used to be. And that, of course, is suspicious activity report. So that leaves the president. Your final vehicle to exercise your sovereignty, which is supposed to be vested with you. I mean, that's our system. Exercise your sovereignty and enact change. And what the Biden administration was attempting to do, and Democrats and Rhino Republicans, was neuter the president of the United States, he or she in the future. And, because obviously it's not going to apply to anyone before Trump because they're Democrats and Bushes. So it doesn't really matter. They don't get in trouble. I mean, they literally can murder people and they don't get in trouble. U.S. citizens, they can vaporize them, no problem. Without trial, it's not a problem. So what the Supreme Court did today is so much more than side with Donald Trump. The Supreme Court saved the office of the presidency, and the Supreme Court, for the time being, bought the country time to preserve the system that was designed for us. which has been changed so much over the years. And that's the problem. That's why we're always 1, 2 justices, 1, 2 bad votes away from a precedent that is irreversible. Honestly, all power should not be vested in the same spot. That was kind of the point of it all. That was the point of it all. And yet, here we are. I don't want to play a clip because I'm going to read some of this. Obviously, I'm going to read some of this decision. Oh, and by the way, I am going to read some of this. But by the way, it may be 35, 40 minutes, a little bit more after the decision comes out. I get the push from Apple News. This is the thing that really people need to understand. I get the push from Apple News telling me what the Supreme Court did, and it absolutely isn't at all what the Supreme Court did. These are what we call over here tiny pushes. We have documented and detailed, I don't even know. I've never counted them. There probably are like 150 of them, ballpark, maybe 100, 150. During the 20 examples of during the 22 election, these pushes would come out, followed shortly by a, don't forget to vote early. Do you need to get instructions on how to request an absentee ballot? And that would be perfectly fine if, just like reminding every voter to vote, if it wasn't so disproportionate when it comes to who votes by mail. So lie to somebody and then 30 seconds later, remind them to vote by mail. I don't know, folks. To me, we're talking about what are they saying are at the heart of these cases? Election interference. To me, that's election interference. And I don't, in a world without Trump, I'm not sure Republicans understand the Herculean task ahead of them on leveling this playing field. Anyone who's got an Apple phone, look at it right now and read what Apple sent to you about the Supreme Court decision, because that is not at all what the decision does or says. And in fact, even on the issue of, because they did rule that no president has total blanket immunity, and for unofficial acts, that's a separate story. However, and then they provide detailed standards. You can't question his motives, because if you do, then you're questioning the very rights that are given to him, which are indisputable. So it's so hard. And Jack Smith's entire case is like, what was Trump thinking? And the Supreme Court just vaporized that. Anything that is in the lower court, which has been a hack court, favoring Jack Smith all the way. And by the way, Fannie isn't the case for Fannie too, is just like, the bottom line is anything they could sneak past, which will be well beyond the election, is going to be reversed on appeal. They might as well just drop this and move on. They might as well just give this up, because they're in a polling hole because of this, and because they lied to the country about the president being senile. And because his record sucks, which is something else we're going to talk about. Democrats over the weekend, man, part of me feels bad for some of them, but you sat silent while the country was lied to. So I really don't. But let me play this clip from Jonathan Turley, get his reaction, and then we'll talk about more about this decision here. Because again, if you have an Apple phone, look at what Apple sent you. That is not the case. And I'll read it when we get back.
In reading through this opinion, I can't see how this doesn't induce cardiac arrest with the special counsel. At one point in the opinion, they say, look, this is a quote, the indictment's allegations that Trump attempted to pressure the vice president to take particular acts in connection with his role with the certification proceeding thus involve official conduct. And Trump is at least presumptively immune from prosecution for such conduct. The court then goes on to say that the burden, of course, is on Jack Smith. He has to show that this does not pose any intrusions into the executive branch. And the court says that that this, quote, may well hinder the president's ability to perform his constitutional functions. So here the court is imposing a very significant burden on Jack Smith when this goes back to the judge. We talked about how this trial judge has proven to be very favorable towards Jack Smith. She's certainly been motivated to try to get a trial before the election. But the court here is giving much more clear lines than some people expected. They're saying that there is a presumption here that you have to deal with. The burden is high, and the court indicates that it may view this as something that could hinder a president's authority.
Trey, the Biden campaign clearly is indicating that they think this is a loss, at least in the way they wrote that statement that Dana read. I want to just read for 1 second about the dissent from Justice Sotomayor, who writes the dissent with Kagan and Jackson. Today's decision to grant former presidents criminal immunity reshapes the institution of the presidency. It makes a mockery of the principle foundational to our Constitution and system of government that no man is above the law. Whatever happens, as you read through this decision, it does expand the power of the executive. It is pretty consequential if we look at it big picture, Trey.
Well, I always think it was consequential. I mean, who else has plenary pardon power? Who else can order the killing of an American citizen overseas? It's always been the president. So presidents have always enjoyed powers that the rest of us do not. I read that dissent as just, they must not have read the majority opinion, because the majority opinion is pretty simple. Unofficial acts have no immunity at all. Official acts, there is immunity. We're going to presume that it was official, and
there it is. So we're gonna. This is two things. First of all, Jonathan Turley's funny. Second of all, I can't believe I'm agreeing with Trey Gowdy. It's like they didn't read the majority opinion, which, by the way, is kind of long. So admittedly, I haven't had a chance to read it all myself, but I didn't read the recap. I went with the conclusion part of it and the actual ruling. But they clearly state here, the president is not above the law. But this is where you really, this is where you're getting to. It's like such a detailed, and this is the thing that strikes me funny is, this is more detailed, like Turley said, that anybody really kind of expected them to be for once, because they're always kicking the can. And yet the majority and some of the commentators out there today are like totally missing the plot. I mean, they lay this out in pretty solid detail. And I want to bring on a guest real quick to react to all this. Of course, I'm going to get rid of the video, but as always, he's there for us when we need him. Daniel Street, ladies and gentlemen. Daniel, I mean, this really, let me ask you, first of all, thanks so much for coming on. Second of all, are you surprised by how, like I was just talking about, were you surprised by how detailed this opinion is? Or, like, get your reaction to what Turley said and Gowdy said there.
Sure. First, thanks for having me on. But
anytime.
The Supreme Court decided a couple of issues and went a little farther than what I expected them to. And I do have to say, though, as I was reading the opinion, I read it earlier this morning, I was, pleasantly surprised at how many predictions I made came to be true.
Yep.
But the Supreme Court actually went a little further. I didn't anticipate the presumptive immunity theory that the court adopted, and I didn't expect the Supreme Court to come out and actually say, "Hey, these are official acts." I expected them to just kick all of that back to the Court of Appeal. I mean, to the district court. The Supreme Court actually went and analyzed the different sections of the indictment, and said that some of the indictment involved official acts. For instance, the allegations were President Trump supposedly threatening to fire attorneys in the United States Department of Justice. The Supreme Court said that is core
presidential
function for the president is absolute immunity.
Yeah.
And that's the end of that. And then the other thing that the Supreme Court said, and so the opinion was 6-3 in favor of presidential immunity, except for this next part, which was part 3C of the majority opinion. That's 5-4 because Justice Barrett did not join in this particular part. The Supreme Court said that if something's determined, once it's determined to be official, it has to be expunged from the case. It can't be presented to the jury. It can't be argued. Nobody can be questioned about it. So it just has to be totally excised and removed. So what the Supreme Court did here in my view, particularly when you add it with Fisher, the Fisher decision last week,
Yeah.
is utterly gut the DC indictment of President Trump.
That's it. I mean, right. There's nothing left here. There really is nothing left because people have to understand why. I mean, they shotgun charge so they can present all of these different pieces to make a theory work. They don't expect everything to stick, but they're trying to tell a story and they're trying to make a narrative that the jury understands. And he needed a lot of these other charges. By the way, the same thing with Georgia. That's the same thing. I mean, it's a typical prosecutor, is, a very typical tactic. Let me read something from the opinion. Are you ready?
Sure.
It just boggles my mind. And you're the authority on this, man, because you are. And for people, anyone who's listening right now, because it's a nice size audience who has never read Daniel's books, they're amazing. You can go to danielonstreet.com and go check out his books on the media and media hoaxes. And I say this every time Daniel's on, you will forget about all of these hoaxes, but then there are the big ones. None of us will forget. How they present information to the public is, like, in my mind, starting to become criminal. Like, and it would be fine if we were a party media system where everyone acknowledged they're not impartial organizations and they all are pushing an opinion. Everything would be fine if we did that, but it's almost criminal because they're not. They're pretending they're impartial, and once again, they have failed the public grossly on reporting on a story. This is the paragraph that jumped out at me. Whenever the president and vice president, and this is dealing with the Mike Pence situation, whenever the president and vice president discuss their official responsibilities, they engage in official conduct. All right. But why is this? Just keep in mind, folks, that this is the entire basis that the media and Democrats have been calling Trump and everybody else, Steve Bannon, everybody. Robert Barnes, with him and I both have argued that this was completely normal, what went on. Democrats have tried to do things like this in the past, and this gets to the heart of them calling everyone an insurrectionist and all of that, okay? Whenever the president and vice president discuss their official responsibilities, they engage in official conduct. Presiding over the January 6th certification proceeding, at which members of Congress count the electoral votes, is a constitutional and statutory duty of the vice president. Article 2, Section 1, Clause 3, Amendment 12, 3 USC Section 15. Here we go. The indictment's allegations that Trump attempted to pressure the vice president to take particular acts in connection with his role at the certification proceeding thus involve official conduct. And Trump is at least presumptively immune from prosecution for such conduct. I mean, like you, I was stunned they got so specific. But this is something like, and I know you saw us doing this even back then. You and I have talked about this. Robert Barnes and I trying to explain the history, the vice presidential role in certifying votes. This is not something that was novel to this extent. Yeah, sure, because they changed the entire system of COVID. So there were certain questions that were new, but nothing that they did fell outside of the purview of their powers and their authority. And that is the basis for everybody being labeled an election, being labeled an insurrectionist. Like, this is what they were trying to do. They were trying to wage a coup and overturn the election, and they were engaging in acts that the powers of their office allow them to engage in. And Democrats have attempted to exercise these powers before. I mean, the whole thing was so maddening to me. It was so maddening because, of course, and by the way, Democrats have done a lot more than that. So that's the one to me that jumps right out. And again, it's an example of them being extremely specific. I gotta tell you, is there anything that the liberal justices, I mean, I understand, Daniel, that they're liberals, and I understand that, but there are some things here. I think they conditioned us to expect less of them. This is an opinion we should, as the voter in this country, we should expect from them. They should do their damn job. And they did it today. They did it. And I think we're all just kind of stunned because they don't often. And I feel like, are we giving them credit for something they shouldn't be, I don't know. I don't want to say this the wrong way, but are we giving them too much credit? Because shouldn't we expect them to just follow the letter of the damn law?
Yeah, well, this particular question, or the question posed by the court and answered by the court in the case today,
They did
uh,
it.
is res nova. It had never been addressed by any other courts other than the district court and the court of appeal, and so this is a monumental decision. This, if you're somebody like me that's a court watcher and I'm always reading opinions, this opinion
It's 2 and 2
will
weeks.
live on for 100 years, long after we're all gone. And I will tell you, though, and it has implications far beyond this DC prosecution. You think about the Georgia case. How does the Georgia case, or at least 90% of it, survive this analysis? And the answer is it probably does not. So this is a good illustration, as you're talking about, of the Supreme Court actually taking the bull by the horns. And
They saved the presidency today, Daniel. They
did.
saved the presidency. I can't explain. I can't say this. That's not. I'm not being hyperbolic. I'm not being over dramatic. This was it. If they gutted immunity from the president, then he would be, or she would be, like essentially a eunuch, for figuratively speaking. They would be subjected to all sorts of well, can I do this? Can I say this? Can I act on this? They would be questioning every move. They would be totally handicapped, is a real, the good way. And considering Congress does nothing to keep the state in check anymore, they do not. The presidency is the last vehicle for us to exercise our will, that's it. In the executive branch, it's the only elected office in the executive branch where the voter says, this is the direction I want you to go in. If they handicapped the president, that would be it. Like the idea of the sovereign voter would be dead. Like, am I being over dramatic with this?
Well, no, I don't think so. In fact, I was just talking to another lawyer about that very issue. We said if the district court and the DC Circuit's opinion had remained the law, that is, if the three dissenting justices in this case, in the Supreme Court's case, had carried the day, then the presidency would have been eviscerated and, for lack of a better word, destroyed. And I think really the way I analyze the dissent, and what I said about it when I was talking to this other lawyer, I said the left think that this power, meaning the power to prosecute the president, the power to illegitimately, shall we say, prosecute the president, is never going to be turned on them. So they're not worried about it. They think they're just gutting conservative presidents.
Yeah.
And that's my opinion about it. And so it's very, very short-sighted, and the DC Circuit and the district court and the dissenting justices in this decision today are either unaware or they don't care the damage that would have been done to the presidency had this decision come down any other way.
I want to put up, because just to give people an idea of the mind of a liberal, what you were just saying, because for people who think, well, they can't possibly, Daniel, they can't possibly think that it won't be turned on them. I'm going to put up some tweets that Sean Davis screenshotted as a reaction from Democrats to this decision. And if you think Daniel's that they don't live in a world where they can comfortably think that and be secure or confident in those beliefs, here is their reaction. Here is how they're interpreting what the Supremes did and said, even though, of course, it's not the case. This is some of the stuff you're going to see from these people. Okay, here's one. All right. Biden should drone strike the Supreme Court justices' houses as an official act of presidency. Apparently, it's constitutionally protected. So that's a brilliant decision made. Not. The president equals king. Wow. I watched my country die today. Scatterbrain is an appropriate username for this person. Okay. President Biden can have Supreme Court justices executed for treason. He can drone strike Mar-a-Lago, rape, pillage, and murder at will, all in the name of an official act. I am effing disgusted. They didn't read the opinion. They don't understand. They don't have a good grip or even a basic grip on what we're talking about or these issues, the law, what the Supreme Court said. They just don't get it. And this idea, because they did believe that, they're going to be able to prosecute the president for anything, but I don't care because it's never going to be turned on me. All right. So this is the
Right.
world. Look at the world they live in their minds. They're not even remotely close to understanding what we're talking about, like that, or the whole damn country's talking about right now. So to them, I don't know. I think they just feel secure in the dangers of these things that they're pursuing. Like, I'll never get thrown off the ballot. Republicans will never throw me
Yeah.
off the ballot too, right? They just don't get it. And it's like, first of all, just for the audience, can you briefly just tell people what they just said is stupid? And of course, there is a major difference between what they're talking about and Trump acting within his authority to do something.
Oh yeah, the Supreme Court did not just say in this decision that the president can drone strike anybody with impunity. I mean, that's just lunacy. But it doesn't surprise me. That's what to expect from the left. These are the same people who think packing the court's a good idea and standing outside the Supreme Court and threatening the Supreme Court justices is a good idea. These are the same people that attempted to murder Justice Kavanaugh, and their minions are all camped outside of Supreme Court justices' homes and trying to terrorize people. I mean, so what do you expect from those people? One thing I do take some solace in, though, Rich, is always keep in mind that social media is not the real world in large degree. There aren't that many people who believe that lunacy. It's just they've got a big bullhorn on social media, and they all have 50 accounts and with 27 followers, and they make it look like there's 50 times as many idiots as there actually are. So keep that in mind. But what the Supreme Court did here today was protect and defend and preserve the presidency of the United States. That's what they did today. That's how important this was.
Yeah.
Because what the Democrats have been doing with their lawfare is literally undermining the executive office. And that's not to say that it's over, but the Supreme Court made it much, much more difficult. And another important point for people to remember, we didn't know if the Supreme Court was going to go this far, but they said that once official acts are official, or once acts are determined to be official, those have to be expunged and taken out of the equation. So the DOJ cannot use their leftist friendly judge to try to make an end run around that and get the evidence in front of the jury anyway. So this is it's just a hammer blow to the DC circuit, and it's going to reverberate, as I mentioned, to the Georgia case and to a lesser extent to the Florida documents case.
There were reports that the White House and Jack Smith were actually really upset with Fani Willis for bringing that indictment. I don't know how true they are, but today, after them, they're getting dealt this blow, it kind of makes sense to me now. And those reports become more believable to me because it's like the pile-on effect, Daniel, the pile-on effect. And then it optically looks even worse now that one case or one attempt, you have the Jack Smith investigation. Let's call it the investigation, right? One of the investigations. It's bad enough when one is delivered such a bad blow. And then when you have a state or an attorney general, a district attorney, whatever it may be, also now going to be dealt that. But like optically, it looks even worse. You know what I mean? It's like, all right, Jack Smith, they're ironing out some of the details of this, and they could have pretended like the investigation is still credible and we'll have to adjust to this decision. But when it just deals all these different blows to everyone's efforts, and the efforts are multiple and they're coming from every direction, it just optically looks bad to the voter. It looks like every single one of these investigations is not credible, which of course I believe they are not. And I don't believe they are not. They are not. All right. It's not a matter of an opinion. It's an objective fact. They're not credible investigations. Nobody has ever nobody's ever believed this kind of thing would happen. So it's like they're knee jerk. Even they believe they're not credible, even if they're not willing to admit it, because that's what's behind their surprise. Why voters are constantly surprised about these things when we tell them. They just didn't think we get these opinions. I never thought it would happen here. I know it'll never go that far. We hear these kind of things from voters all the time. So it just looks optically bad when there are multiple investigations and they all are dealt the blow that you're talking about, because that's what really happened here. Let me ask you this, and if I don't have much time to go, I did want to get your opinion on the debate before whenever it is that you got to go. But let me ask you this: do you think there are two like schools of thought here. So do you think, I guess it depends on how fanatical you think Democrats are. Do you think that this will weaken their position going forward? So it's harder to take bold action against Trump in New York, for instance, right? If they were going to, or on the other side of that, is that they're boxed into the corner. Everything is failing. That's the one case they got in a conviction on. And that would be the case they have to leverage and throw the book at them. Like, there really are two ways to look at this. If public opinion is going to blow up on you if you sentence this guy to prison, or you do something crazy like slap an ankle bracelet on him. Or there's the other side, which is that they're fanatics and they don't think rationally like that. And they think this is the only case we have. So we have to throw the book at them now because it's the only chance we're going to get. What, I know it's so hard to get in the minds of these people, but I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, I would lean towards they're going, the left and the Democrats in general will work as hard as possible to have the book thrown at Trump in New York on the sentencing on July 11th. The reason I say that is let's look at what's happened up to now. We had the effort to disqualify Trump, which, for the insurrection nonsense under the 14th Amendment. And the United States Supreme Court nuked that 9-0. That's over with. We've got the Florida documents case, which is mired in all manner of procedural issues. It's not even set for trial, so that's not going anywhere before the election. We got this case that the Supreme Court just nuked. No matter what happens, this case is not going to trial before the election. And one thing the Supreme Court said is the mistakes that were made in the district court and the Court of Appeal are probably because they were in a big hurry. So the majority opinion says, slow down, pay attention to what you're doing, and be judicious about this. And keep in mind, when this case goes back to the district court, for the district court to decide in D.C. what's official and what's not official, those decisions are subject to appeal on the immunity issue. The Supreme Court noted that in their opinion. So you're looking at an issue, that case won't be resolved for 2 years.
That was a warning. That's a warning. For people who don't understand how the Supreme Court will throw a warning at a lower court. That's a warning. That's like, do not let this get before us again. Like, be smart, slow down. And by the way, anything you do, could end up right back here, because it's embarrassing. Isn't it embarrassing on big cases to have your opinions just eviscerated like that? I mean, well, professionally, like,
I think most judges would be embarrassed. Most judges I know don't like to be reversed.
Yeah.
I think the district court and the court of appeal here, just in my opinion, expected to be reversed. But a lot of what's been going on in these cases is political. But also, then we got the Georgia case. And what's the status of the Georgia case? It stayed pending the appeal of the disqualification issue involving Fani Willis. So, and that case is being orally argued in October. So that's the end of it. All these efforts to prevent Trump from being the president through all of this lawfare are over, except for New York. And I just find it impossible to believe that these people who, despite the fact at every turn, didn't get the result they were expecting. Oh, we'll indict him and people will turn against him. Then we'll get gag orders and people will turn against him. And then we'll try to disqualify him and people will turn against him. And none of it worked. And they haven't pulled the plug on any of this lunacy yet. I don't see them pulling the plug on it between now and July 11.
What we heard, we started our post conviction, post debate poll yesterday. And we, we'll probably wrap up tomorrow. At least that's the plan. Already, even in like peer to peer, the back and forths are like, who is this Trump? Who is this guy? Like, where was he when he was the president? Like, we're getting this a lot, right? And that's, like, you're getting this a lot. Like, the amount of adversity and the amount, like the way he's handled the adversity. And he's not been the guy from 16 or 17 through 20. And the debate performance, he was over there measured and calm, and he wasn't, screaming. And there are voters, I would say this, like the true swing voter is pleasantly surprised with how Donald Trump is behaving and acting and running his campaign in the face of everything. And I think that this stuff kind of scares them, when you have this, I really do. And, when you have the Supreme Court, no, you can't do this. Now, twice, big issues, huge issues. The
Three
ballot,
times.
three
Three
times, right. Oh, right. And then
Because Fisher was last week.
it was last week. I forgot, man. It was like 2 in 2 weeks, 2 huge ones in 2 weeks. And then, of course, the state cases were thrown him off the ballot. And then, like you just said, Fannie, I mean, she got exposed as she's a crook. I mean, so all of this stuff just looks so bad. And there's Trump. Instead of being the Trump they think they knew, he's being very disciplined and very gracious. And it's I think this is going to be a bad couple of polling weeks and maybe months for Joe Biden. I got to get your take on the debate. I mean,
Yeah.
you're the author of books on fake news. They hid this they tried to hide this from the people for years, and just the emperor had no clothes. Daniel, what
yeah, they really didn't hide it from anybody that was paying any attention to President Biden's infirmities. We've talked about it for a long time, but I think this is just anecdotal, but on Friday, my wife and I met some friends at a local restaurant here in Monroe, Louisiana. And there was about 8 people. And we were all talking about the debate. And of course, everybody I'm talking to, everybody was just flabbergasted at how bad Biden did. But everybody expected him to do bad because they know that he only has half a noodle floating around in his brain. But he did way worse than anybody expected. So the real mistake wasn't just lying about his mental status. The real mistake was that he's way worse than even people who knew he was bad off. He's way worse than even those people thought. And a friend of mine said, I'm just going to watch until Joe Biden, flubs his words and stutters and gets stuck in a stream of thought. And he said it took less than a minute.
Yeah, it was the
guy texts me. He says, well, I'm out. It took a minute. So, it was a debacle, and it couldn't happen to a nicer guy. I will tell you, I've had a lot of people talk about, I feel sorry for Joe Biden. But the problem is I'm in the National Rifle Association, and I've been fighting for the Second Amendment for all my life. And we've been fighting Joe Biden and his vicious lies for 50 years. And I don't feel sorry for the man at all. I'm sorry.
I want to play something real quick because this is the direction that Democrats wanted to go. How much time do you have, by the way? I'm just going to ask you because it was so quick, folks. I don't know how much time he even has. So
I've got another 10 minutes.
That's how Daniel rolls. All right. I'm like, yo, big decision. Can you come on? And he'll do it. He's great like that. So I didn't even know how much. This is the direction that Democrats want to go in with this. All right. I just don't think it's like the best direction at all. And then you have Chuck Todd on the other side of this, just saying things like, listen, it's going to be Kamala Harris and everybody needs to just get it under there. Because that is, in my mind, the only legal and not only legal, but political way they could replace Joe Biden is with Kamala Harris, which would be an even worse election result for Democrats than if they were to keep Joe Biden. All right. But they asked Nancy Pelosi, and the Sunday folks, the weekend shows were delicious, in case you weren't watching. All right. It hasn't been this juicy in a long time. All right. So here we go. Let me play this clip and you tell me what you think about this. All right. Let's let it go. Cut 1, Nancy Pelosi. Let me unmute.
A friend of President Biden's wrote the following. He wrote, Joe Biden, a good man and a good president, has no business running for re-election. If he insists on running and he loses to Trump, Biden and his family and his staff and party members who enabled him will not be able to show their faces.
Wow.
What do you say to that? Is there any part of you that believes that President Biden should step aside?
I want you to know I came home to California, South and North, and people are for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. They have some judgment about a person who sat on that, stood on that stage and lied. If you're just talking about the debate, I'm respectful of some of the opinions that people have, but I also am respectful of the grassroots. My people are very much Biden, Kamala Harris. And this is an opportunity for Joe Biden to go out there and show he has the stamina and the rest. And by the way,
By the way, I'm just going to stop it real quick right there, Daniel, and just make a note before I finish playing this that she said and Kamala Harris, okay? Because, of course, Nancy Pelosi is Team California. There are factions within the Democratic Party, and she is obviously Team California. So the only way, and she's talking about the grassroots, because you cannot, listen, millions and millions and millions of people voted for Joe Biden. The only way you tell them their vote doesn't matter is if it's Kamala Harris, because they also technically voted for her. So there's that to keep in mind. And also, lastly, before I finish this, he did go and he sounded like a total moron before he went to Camp David. He's like, I may not talk very well anymore, but I can debate. I mean, I may not be able to debate very well. It was just awful. And people are like, yeah. I mean, it's just clapping seal stuff.
While the press, and for some reason they don't, there are healthcare professionals who think that Trump has dementia.
There we go. There it is. So that's the direction, Daniel, they're going to go with this. Trump, there are healthcare professionals that think Trump has dementia. That's really where I was going with that. I just wanted to clarify the first couple of points you made. Citing more experts after that debate proves that we have a crisis of expertise in this country where like they have no credibility whatsoever. I mean, Joe Biden was like, I have, academics who rate me as one of the best presidents and you as dead last. And the American public is like, well, then they're stupid, right? 51 intelligence officers said the Biden laptop isn't real, it's Russia propaganda, and you have the American public going, well, they lied. So they just keep citing experts that nobody believes. And to tell the American public to believe those experts, Trump has dementia, when they just watched a very sharp, very cognitive, witty, disciplined Donald Trump against a totally senile idiot a couple of feet away, is just an incredibly dumb strategy. And I just can't believe it.
It's ludicrous. But I have a big smile on my face because in these circumstances, I've always reminded of what a friend of mine who's now deceased once said. He said, anybody more than 40 miles from home carrying a briefcase is an expert. So that's the kind of experts these guys are relying on. Look, anybody that saw President Trump, President Trump thinks faster. He has more energy and more stamina than any 77-year-old I've ever seen in my life. Now, is he as quick? Is he as witty as he was when he was 45? Probably not. But he is light years ahead of most 77-year-olds, and he is infinitely sharper than Joe Biden. So that's, I don't care who they parade around as so-called experts. Anybody with their own eyes and ears can make that determination. It only takes a couple of minutes.
Yeah, I just don't see how that works out exactly. I mean, you're telling people after lying to them about so much. And then again, today, we just got another one. I mean, because I think again, like we talked about before, the court went so much further than anyone thought we did. I don't think there's anything convoluted about this decision. So people are going to digest this decision and say, wait a minute, you told us based on this, especially based on the paragraph that I read, that they're insurrectionists. They broke the law here. They were trying to break the law. They were trying to engage in a coup. And that's not the case. I mean, it's just one hoax, one lie, one deception after the other. And it's the worst kind when you're asking them to look, when you're asking them to disbelieve something that they already saw with their own eyes. And it's like, the economy's good. Why, wages are growing. Why don't you feel it? Are you stupid? Like, this is all not going to work, Daniel. This is not going to work. And Mark Hemingway from the Federalist for P, I wanted to give him a shout out because if I don't get a chance to read it, he wrote an article today that I think is great. And it basically is the Democrat media aren't upset Biden is senile. They're mad they can't hide it anymore. Just
That's
think
right.
of that headline. Just think
That's
of that.
exactly right.
It's incredible. I mean, I don't know.
Look, I write about fake news all the time.
I was
Rich.
just going to say, it's the worst one.
So I'm accustomed. I know the media has no credibility. I know all these Democrat politicians have no credibility, and I don't mean to just limit that to Democrats for that matter. But I'm used to that, and you're used to that. There's a lot of people who aren't. There are a lot of people who have been gaslit this whole time, and then they see how bad off Joe Biden is, and like, wow, everybody was lying to me. That includes Democrat donors. There's a lot of big money Democrat donors who've been lied to as well. So this is a real disaster for the Democrats, and I just don't see a way out for them. I don't really think it's legitimate effort for them to try to dump Biden now at this late date. It's, they're just, they made their bed and they got to lie in it, but it's not going to be pleasant.
They got to lie in it. You're right. I mean, that's it. Yeah, I would just, I think again, looking at the state laws, looking at the parties rules, they do have super delegates, but at least on the first round, the non-super delegates, the bound delegates are bound. They're pledged and bound to vote for him in that first round. So like somebody will have to submit a motion to vote on that he's senile and we're removing him from the ticket. That doesn't exist. That bylaw doesn't exist. They'd have to come up, be very creative. But go ahead.
Well, the Democrats are the ones who rigged the primaries so nobody could run against the guy.
Oh, you took the words right out of my mouth.
I mean, and now they were going to, oh, wow, what are we going to do? We created this nightmare scenario. I mean, it couldn't happen to a nicer bunch of people. That's all I can tell you. But, hey, Rich, I got to sign off.
Tell people where to find you real quick, Daniel, and then bounce.
And I wanted to thank you for having me on. Everybody can follow me at my website, danielrstreet.com, and also my Substack. I'm really focused on my Substack, and I just launched on my Substack. There's a written part, but I just launched about 2 weeks ago. There's a video part. So every time I do a written article, I'm going to do a video version of it because so many people don't like to, they don't want to read the lengthy stuff that I write. And one last thing I wanted to do, there's a guy I wanted to give a shout out to, if it's okay with you.
Absolutely. Of course.
There's an attorney named William Shipley. He defends a lot of J6 guys. He's a former federal prosecutor. He's known as Shipwreck Crew. Yep. His analysis of this immunity case has been stellar. And I say, when I said earlier that I was right about everything, I guess I should really say that Shipley was right about everything because he was on top of all of that. So if everybody wants to get a good opinion about, or wants to get good legal analysis, I would encourage them all to read my Substack, but check out Shipley's as well, because he was dead on the money on the J6 case, the presidential immunity case, and the Fisher case.
I was just going to say, and Fisher, where we're dealing with obstruction and everything. So absolutely. We follow him on X now, obviously formerly known as Twitter.
Right.
Go check out Daniel's Substack. Let's let him run, but go check it out. I love his Substack. You all should go check it out too, as well, and also danielrstreet.com. Thanks for joining us, buddy. As always, you have a great day. Okay, happy Monday.
You too.
All right, that's danielrstreet.com. Danielrstreet.com. Look, every time Daniel comes on, I'll tell you about his books. Everyone wrote, especially during the Trump era, oh, this hoax, the Russia hoax. Everyone's an authority on the Russia hoax, and I like Molly Hemingway's book. That was good. But Daniel's a lawyer, and Daniel compiled, that's one, because there are multiple volumes, but the one dealing with a lot of Russia crap, which it's volume 1, I believe. Just the way he does it, because he's a lawyer, he compiles all these cases, and then it's like a complete prosecution of the media. I'm telling you, you'll never believe them again. If you're watching this show and you're somebody who still kind of listens to the media and pretend if maybe you're a Fox watcher, you'll never believe them again, because during that era and beyond, they still do it to this day. I played a Fox clip before, but to this day, they run with the narratives that simply are not true, and they do it when they're trying to lend credibility to their brothers and sisters in corporate media, and that's it. Oh wow, this is funny. You guys want to hear this? Apparently, on last Thursday, with the debate, there was there's an incestuous relationship between the entertainment industry, the media, and the Democratic Party, as you all understand. And there was a debate watch party in Los Angeles on Thursday night to feature Harris's husband, Doug Emhoff, Pritzker, Whitmer, and Beshear. Andy Beshear is obviously the Democratic governor of Kentucky. There were other high-profile attendees by a few answers, and Rob Reiner. And he was screaming about losing, and Jane Fonda had tears in her eyes. Oh, my God. These people are crazy. It's like Jane Fonda and others have been saying for years, if we lose this election, we're going to move to wherever. If we lose this election, we're going to leave the U.S. Well, why the hell are you still here? Why are you still here? All right, it's 12:55 before the commercial break because I got a lot other stuff I want to go over because we have to talk about how Democrats are trying to deal with this reality that they have been caught. It's not just that all of a sudden, right? I can't believe he's senile. Politico article, Axios. I want to go. There's so much I want to go over, but taken in concert because we won't have a chance to read them all. The family's blaming the advisors. That's always what happens when there's nothing left for the campaign to do. They're blaming, and folks, I kid you not. They said that Biden is overworked. This is the laziest, least competent, and capable president in my lifetime. Even Bill Clinton, who didn't stroll into the office until 10 a.m., worked harder than Joe Biden. Barack Obama is kind of lazy too. Not as lazy as his wife, but lazy. And yet he worked hard. His own hours, but he worked. He didn't work hard with the Congress. He didn't like being the president in the traditional role of president. He didn't like, by the way, he would send Joe to do that stuff because he knew everybody longer. Joe had been there for so long. Anytime there was an issue down on Capitol Hill, he sent Joe Biden. He would call John Boehner up for a report because he got John Boehner's number immediately. If you just give an expensive drink to John Boehner, he'll bend over and do whatever you want. I mean, this is a guy who used to be working class, had a bar from a family who owned a bar in Ohio. The worst kind of example of going to Washington, D.C. and being completely corrupted. I don't remember how young I was, certainly in my 20s, watching John Boehner take a check on the floor of the House of Representatives. Unbelievable. I will never, burned in my brain. And the worst part about it is a self-avowed communist is the only reason I saw it. Man, he got the gloat. And there was really no way to defend it. There was nothing to defend. It was what it was. Anyway, you got the family blaming the advisors. You got the advisors leaking stories. And of course, you have loyalists from Team Obama to Team Clinton whispering to the media things and saying things. Obama publicly said that the party needs to stick with Joe Biden, but privately, that is not the case. The Obamas and the Clintons don't like the Bidens. All right. It's not that they don't like, it is that they don't like them, but they also don't respect Joe Biden. They think that Joe Biden is an idiot. When Obama and Clinton ran against each other in 2008, it was very, very dirty. There were dirty things back and forth, but intellectually, they're kind of like kindred spirits. They saw each other as kindred spirits. They're thinkers, or at least they think they are. They're the when Augustus Rodin was, sculpting the thinker. They both think that was like emblematic of them or something. That's who they are. But they think Joe is dumb, and he is. He's not a smart guy. He didn't graduate anywhere near the top of his class like he claimed. He was like in the bottom 4 or something. He's an idiot, and they don't respect him. Joe had a bit of a gift in dealing with people, like average people, and talking in the way that an average American talks. So some value there. He was the only one they could bring in off the bench to beat Donald Trump in 2020, even with how many different ways they did rig that election. Everything from what I just said, the fake experts with the 51 intelligence experts, et cetera, multiple ways. Even with all of those ways to attempt to fix the outcome, they would not have been able to against like a Pete Buttigieg or Elizabeth Warren. Bernie Sanders was going to win the 2020 Democratic nomination before Obama got involved and did what he did, which was call everybody else, get them to drop out, call the media, and pull every card he could pull with them, convince the public, convince the Democratic electorate that Bernie Sanders cannot beat Donald Trump.
And that's what they did. And it was kind of sad to watch, because you are polling these people and they're telling you, I want to vote for Bernie, but I'm not going to, because I'm told he can't beat Donald Trump and we have to be a party player. So I'm going to vote for Joe Biden. So take that in a context, because this is where they are now. The party did not want Joe Biden. Nobody has ever become the nominee, losing every early state the way he did until South Carolina. That has never happened. Even when Bill Clinton was the comeback kid, he at least placed in New Hampshire. Joe Biden did not. Joe Biden got creamed in Nevada. Joe Biden got creamed in Iowa. Everywhere where they saw Joe Biden up close and personal, in the beginning, they did try to show him to the voters, and he was decrepit and geriatric back then, and they rejected him and they moved on and they wanted Bernie. So keep that in the context. Like, now you're asking them to stick with him, even though he's what he is now. See, he's what their political opponents, Republicans, said he is. They now have got to deal with the reality that their own, I'm talking about voters. They have to deal with the reality that their own party lied to them and the media lied to them, and that Republicans were right. Joe Biden is senile. Think about that. So with that in mind, privately, those leaders are talking about, what the hell are we going to do? But Obama knows that it's not a viable thing to just try to replace somebody. If the only one I could see them being able to do it with, as I have said a million times now, the Michelle Obama thing is not going to happen. Gretchen Whitmer, of course, wants to be president. I wouldn't be surprised if Shapiro started to get more active. We all know Gavin Newsom wants to be president, which, by the way, splits the California faction. They have a problem. And Daniel's right. This was a demon of their own design. Had they just let the primary be competitive, kicking Dean Phillips off ballots, not allowing RFK to even compete, they made this situation that they have to now deal with. And the only way I can see them replacing Biden is with the number 2 on the ticket. And it's tough, but when you have people like George Stephanopoulos and Chuck Todd, you have to understand, these people pretend to be journalists. They pretend to be pundits, that are objective and impartial. Guys, you're never going to see me at a Republican or Democrat victory party. You're never going to see me at a watch party or something like that. I just don't think that's the appropriate place to be. If I ever was on team anyone and I was hired to do it, I would tell you, and then I would make that obviously disclose that, and then I would step back from trying to pretend like I'm an impartial pundit. I didn't even go to the convention at Turning Point, even though I conducted the straw poll. It's not appropriate. Somebody like Chuck Todd, not only does he go to these parties, does he mingle with these people, even look in WikiLeaks. He uses his ability to get into those parties to woo over the new 19-year-old whatever, to, newly out of college kids that come to work at MSNBC. It's right in the WikiLeaks. Anyway, let's watch this and let's listen to what he has to say, because it's just incredible.
Then you're already making a mistake, right? When you make decisions based on, well, I'm afraid more people will be involved in this process. This is just sort of every time a political party worries about the voters and then tries to sort of create a system that sort of kind of sideswipe, you're opening yourself up for problems here. That said, let's be realistic here. If he decides to do this, to back off, he controls his delegates.
Yeah.
Because they are already his delegates.
Yeah.
He would control, essentially, he'd be king or queen maker here. Mm-hmm. And there is really no other option. Okay, it's Kamala Harris. And I kind of think everybody needs to just realize this. It's going to be her, which perhaps is why suddenly you have other Democratic figures saying, as much as they want this, they're nervous if she leads the ticket. But I think you look at Biden's poll numbers and say, if you believe this is about Biden, then you would say stick with him. I think it's pretty obvious this is about Trump, which is why Biden is. I mean, we should look at this through the other prism. How has Trump not gotten a lift out of this? I think it just shows you how.
Mark?
Well, look, he's got a really.
What are you talking about? He surged 4 points in the New York Times poll. But in any event, Chuck Todd talks to these people, folks. All right. I mean, he does. this is, again, a very incestuous relationship. So if Chuck Todd is talking about Kamala Harris, then the conversation there about Kamala Harris is very real. It's the only way to get around the challenges that I have been talking about. You cannot just waltz Michelle Obama into the convention and nominate her. You cannot do it. There are primary rules. I mean, there are party rules dealing with the primary votes that have already taken place. And then, of course, there are state laws. You simply cannot do whatever you want. And then there are the optics of leapfrogging. Because it's like, oh, Gavin Newsom's going to be the nominee. Then there are the problems of leapfrogging. The first non-white, first female vice president ever. To Republicans, that wouldn't be that big of a deal. Because Republicans would say the best person for the job is the one we should nominate. Democrats don't think like that. They think in terms of victimhood, and they think in terms of privilege and protected classes and perceived injustices they fabricate in their minds. It would not work. And I'm telling you, as Obama apparently knows, as I understand, there's a very real risk, one that I happen to agree with, that Kamala Harris you would lose even more with Kamala Harris than you would with the senile Joe Biden, which he's talking about. Oh, I can't believe Trump didn't get a bump out of this. He did get a bump out of this, apparently. And I'm telling you, it looks like, I don't know. I don't like to speak too early when we're doing our own poll. Things could absolutely change. I've seen it a million times, but it looks like in our polling, he's going to get a bump too. I don't know that for sure, but if it was just the first day, he's going to get a bump. Things could change. Things could iron out. We'll see. Don't hold me to it, and don't twist my arm. I'm just telling you, when you've been doing this as long as I have, you can look at the raw data and say, oh boy, this, you can glean things from the raw even before it's weighted. But it's, and Trump is getting a bump, but it looks like Biden's just declining. And people could make the argument, well, if we put in Kamala, they would go to Kamala. I don't think that's the case. Kamala is an unpopular political figure. Badly. They don't like her. People do not like Kamala Harris. And by the way, she's not particularly coherent either. And it's not because of age. It's because she's stupid. It's because she slept her way to the top. There's another real risk we have to talk about. And I know it's 1:08 and I'm way over break. But you're running against Donald Trump. You're not running against Ron DeSantis. You're not running against Ted Cruz. You're not running against Marco Rubio. You're not running against Nikki Haley. You're going to hear heels up Harris more than once. Because it's true. Because it is true she slept with a fat, old, married man to become the person she is today. And America's going to ask themselves, do I really want a role model like that for my young daughter to look up to? And maybe there is a double standard there with men, because Donald Trump and his, whatever, he was a gigolo about, I mean, maybe there is a double standard. Maybe it's unfair, but that's tough. It is what it is. They're going to say, even if that's true, they'll say, well, my choice is between a competent one and an incompetent one. Which one do you think they're going to go for? Joe Biden can speak to voters in parts of Pennsylvania, Northampton, Pennsylvania, one of the only 2 battleground counties left in the damn state. He can speak to voters in Erie. He may lose it. He looks like he's going to lose them both at this point. But is he going to lose them by 1 point, 2 points, and maybe turnout in certain areas can help that, or is he going to lose Northampton by 10 points? Is he going to lose Erie County by 10 points? He's not. I don't know. Maybe he will. But I'm saying she will. She will. The polls for her have been ugly for a long time. And this idea like, oh, well, we'll just reintroduce her to the country. Her only positive favorable numbers were at a time when the country did not know who she was. Then when the country learned more about her, and those unsure, don't know enough to have an opinion, all those different choices, when that shrunk collectively, her negatives went through the roof. You would need a total image work over, and you're not going to do that in July. It's July 1st. It's mortgage day, first of the month, mortgage day. It's July 1st. It's too late. And the Biden ad, by the way, after post-debate that they dropped money on, and we could play it. I got it. The Biden ad is doubling down on that he's an insurrectionist. Well, the Supreme Court just said he wasn't an insurrectionist. What else is Kamala Harris going to say? At least Joe Biden has some characteristics they could put, they can hang their hat on. Kamala does not. I mean, so the question is, do you want to be loyal and stick with the guy who is your president and lose? Or do you want to be a fair weather friend, show you have no redeeming characteristics like loyalty or integrity or dignity? I mean, you went along with this lie. Don't blame Joe Biden. You all went along with this lie. This is all your lie too. So you're already a liar. You want to add any other not particularly flattering characteristics to your repertoire, or do you want to just like stick with Joe Biden and possibly lose narrowly? I mean, that's the choice the Democratic Party has right now. All right, let's take a break. Listen, one of Obama's top advisors, good little stewards, came out and was like, I was watching this. It was uncomfortable. At first it was uncomfortable. Then it was sad. Then it was this. Then it was that. Talking about how the country is perceived after this debate and how badly we must have looked around the world. And, you wouldn't even be surprised if it shook up markets and stuff like that. Maybe he's being a little bit out there, but the fact of the matter is he's right about how they view how the rest of the world is viewing us and what that could mean for our position and our economy for sure. Anyway, it's as if it wasn't a good enough time before, there's all the more reason now to be looking for safer places to invest your money and be looking for protection in this volatile environment. Stocks are unpredictable. Inflation has a real value on the real impact on the value of currencies. And that's why I want to talk to you about one of our sponsors, Freedom Gold USA. If you've ever thought about investing in gold or silver, or you're just interested in diversifying your investment portfolio, Freedom Gold USA is definitely a company that you should check out. What I like about Freedom Gold, and you saw Brian on the show last week, is that they're helping you make smart investment choices in precious metals. They believe the more you know, the better. So they just want to offer you free guides and consultations. So when you make that decision, you make it with confidence, no pressure, and no hard sell. That's one thing that's different about Freedom Gold, but also they guarantee competitive pricing on some of the best quality and purity gold and silver you'll find. You're getting a solid deal and you know it, and you don't have to worry about extra fees. They'll give you free shipping or offer free insurance on all orders, no matter what the size is. Plus, you even might get some free silver on qualifying purchases. They'll give you $500 credit towards opening a gold or silver IRA. That's a nice bonus. And of course, for the People's Pundit, for us, for our viewers, for our listeners, they have reduced the entry requirement that you need in order to get in order to open an account. Some places, and I know if you've watched the show, you've seen it, other shows, you've seen it, you've called them 50 grand, 20 grand, and even 5 grand. That's in Freedom Gold USA is their entry, but they've lowered that for you guys out there. And it's just make sure you cite that you're from me when you call or when you go online, and it's now down to only $500. And here's the best part. Dealing with them again is simple and hassle-free. No pushy sales tactics. So if you want to learn more, give them a call, 888-279-3592. 888-279-3592. Make sure you tell them that you're coming from me. Also, you could go to the website freedomgoldusa.com/rich. freedomgoldusa.com/rich. And just if you do call, that is our number. That's like our dedicated number, but it doesn't hurt to say, hey, I am a listener of the People's Pundit, and I heard about that deal, and I want to get in on it. And when you do, they're going to enter you, by the way, into a raffle, which is awesome. They're going to enter you into a raffle, and you will have a chance to win even more gold or silver. So one more time, 888-279-3592 or freedomgoldusa.com/rich. All right. You know what? What time is it? It's 1:15. Let's get one more out of the way, folks. You mind? Let's get one more out of the way and get into the next clip I want to show you guys. All right, listen up. If you are not stockpiling medications after what you've been through, what we have all been through, then you could be setting yourself up for a disaster. The warning signs are everywhere with the bird flu season in the headlines. The FDA commissioner just went on record saying, quote, the real worry is that it will jump to human beings where, when that has happened in other parts of the world, the mortality rate has been 25%. We got to have testing, got to have antivirals, and we need to have a vaccine ready to go, unquote. Could it be more transparent as to what they're trying to do? Again, Dr. Eric Ding, COVID-10 expert, said, I would start stockpiling flu medications like Tamiflu for your family starting now. If bird flu is ever human-to-human transmissible, you will regret it when near certain shortages hit, unquote. It is our personal responsibility to be prepared. It is. And unfortunately, fortunately, most people are not. Fortunately, you can get medications like Tamiflu easily without having to book an appointment with your old physicians. The wellness company developed the Contagion Emergency Kit. Laura and I have too for our family. It's a prescription-only stockpile of life-saving medications, including Tamiflu, ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, the Z-Pack, right? Medications that every American should have in the medicine cabinet. And do you? Because most doctors still won't even consider prescribing ivermectin or hydroxychloroquine. That's why we got you covered. Easy to order online. It's a one-of-a-kind kit from the wellness company. Each prep kit provides you with a carefully selected assortment of effective medications for bird flu, COVID-19, other respiratory illnesses. All right. So go check it out. Go to twc.health/TPP. Links for everything, of course, in the video description. Go to twc.health/TPP and grab yourself a kit for your family right now. When using that code at checkout, we'll get you 10% off and free shipping. Kits are only available in the United States, of course. But again, one more time, twc.health/TPP. All right. Got one more to do before the end of the show. But let's get back to it. Listen, this is why they're backing it out. I'm just going to shut up and play this clip. And when we come back, I'm going to try to hook this back around and get to Mark's article, because I really think Mark's article is really, really important. It's a good article. If I don't get to it, I'll share it in the comment section. But I read it this morning and I thought I got to share this with everybody today. All right. This is Harry Enton on CNN going over the polls. And Chuck Todd, you get a bump. All right.
Have new poll numbers for President Biden post-debate?
We do. You know, CBS News YouGov conducted some polling post-debate. We can compare it to the pre-debate numbers. And the bottom line, Al, it's not any good. It's not any good. Look at this. Voters who say that Biden has the mental health to be president. It was just 35% pre-debate. Look where it's dropped to now post-debate, 27%. How about that he should be running for president? It was 37% pre-debate. It's now 28%. I have never seen numbers this bad for an incumbent president during my lifetime. I mean, that mental health to be president, just 27%. You might say, okay, you know, that's low, but a lot of people thought Biden was too old back in 2020. These numbers look nothing like this back in 2020. These numbers were bad already. And the truth is, Allison, they have gotten just considerably worse, even in just a few days after that first presidential debate.
Yeah, there it is. So any way to spin this thing is remarkably difficult. New polling didn't get a bump. There's even new state polling out that suggests this is a real problem for Joe Biden. All right. So we've been looking around the map and talking about this for a while. What would happen if the national polls were correct? And we've gone around and I told you very first up, Maine. If Joe Biden now has fallen below Hillary Clinton levels with working class voters, white working class voters, and his problem is not only white. And we know that. I'm getting there. But if, for instance, in our last poll, he was really at 27% before we leaned people, and then what did he get to when we leaned him? 30? 31? That's below Hillary Clinton. If that's the case, you have states like Maine where Joe Biden would be lucky to eke out a win. He's going to lose the second congressional district by double digits, and he would only win the first district by roughly mid to high single digits, and the state could go for Trump. All right. Second, given the non-college, non-white shift in the national polling. That would put, and everyone's like, Colorado. Colorado is younger, and Colorado's more white, and Colorado's more educated. So that's why Colorado is actually a heavier lift, especially for someone like Trump, than perhaps a state like New Mexico, where in 2016, Trump won the white vote, but he lost the Hispanic vote, and he lost it pretty badly. It was close. It was a closer election there than it is typically in New Mexico in the modern era. Once upon a time, New Mexico was actually a Republican state, but it is not anymore. Or it was a purple state. Republicans won it, more often than not. But post-Bush, the way the financial crisis hurt Hispanic voters who could be 40% of the electorate. When that happened, it was over for Republicans. Now that Trump is clawing back Hispanic support for Republicans, and Republicans are doing better too among all minorities, but they're just not doing as well as Trump is. That puts states like New Mexico in play. It really does. And it's basic math. Trump won the white vote in 2016. He lost the non-white vote, and that was Hillary Clinton's margin. He tied with Biden among whites in 2020, which he lost by a little over 10. He lost the state by a little over 10. He tied the white vote, and then he lost the Hispanic vote. However, he did better with Hispanics in New Mexico than he did nationwide. So, if the white vote, because of the non-college white, obviously, and even college-educated, 4-year college-educated voters are not the margin for Biden they were in 2020. Ditto, by the way, postgrads. Trump is doing better with postgraduates than he did in 2020. If that's the case, Trump is going to win the white vote in New Mexico. That's about, give or take, 55% of the vote in the state. The other 40% is going to be Hispanic. Actually, it's more than that. So let's say it's closer to 60% white. And then 35 to 38% Hispanic, could be upwards of 40. There's a small share of other non-whites, Native Americans, Asians. It's a small share. The two largest blocks are hands down the white vote and the Hispanic vote. And if Trump is doing like 40 to 45% nationally, and I'm being conservative here because there is some suggestion Hispanics are receding a little bit. So he's still doing much better, but there's some suggestion that it is. Let's be safe and just say he gets 40 to 45%. All right. If both past elections are prologue and he does better in New Mexico with Hispanics than he did do nationally, then that's going to be a very close election. That will be, thank you. That will be basically a margin of error nail biter. That's just the math. That's the math. And Biden could be saved by his margin among like Asians or something like that by a hair, by a hair. That's what we're looking at. So, not good. Just not. And I would argue before the debate, that was probably the case anyway. I really would. I would argue that because I think that there was evidence of it before the debate even transpired. All right. Let me see. Am I done with let me just make sure I'm done running the clips I wanted to run. I was going to show you the ad, by the way. Yeah, I mean, should I? Okay. All right, hold on one second. There is another argument. There is another argument to be made for not throwing out Joe Biden. And I'm not sure I subscribe to it. Most years I do. I just don't think we've ever been presented with this kind of a situation. So debates normally don't matter. It's just true. We talked about this before the debate. I ran a few clips. We talked about 2 instances when I do believe that debates had an impact. It's hard to tell because you could argue incumbent advantage looked tenuous at best when they lost the first debate. And then the second debates for incumbents are always the comeback debate because it's the foreign policy debate. We've talked about all this before. They look stronger. They're doing the job. They know what they're doing. They have the grasp on the issues and the leaders, and they've interacted with them. The challenger does not. And they look small. They tend to look small next to the incumbent. That's why they rigged the debates in 2020 and robbed Donald Trump of the ability to body Joe Biden on foreign policy, because Joe Biden's record is awful and Donald Trump's record of foreign policy success is really unequal. It really is. We played the clip where Reagan, the only debate in 1980 was one debate. And Reagan said, look, the only question you got to ask yourself is, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? Is it easier to get gas than it was 4 years ago? Is it more expensive to pay for groceries now than it was 4 years ago? Is America stronger than it was 4 years ago? Or do you feel safer than you did 4 years ago? That was a powerful moment. You could argue, and that is the cited moment. It really is in modern times. The other one, of course, is JFK versus Richard Nixon. If you were listening to the debate on the radio, you believed Richard Nixon won that debate. He had a better grasp of the issues than a young Kennedy. John Kennedy, whatever. He was more, as the vice president, he was more in tune with some of those issues, except for the missile gap. I'm getting into the weeds here, but the missile gap, he was handicapped. He could not say anything because of national security, but Kennedy lied his ass off, and there was nothing Nixon could say to rebuff it. But it didn't matter. People who listened to the radio believed that Nixon won that debate. People who watched it on TV believed Kennedy won that debate. Kennedy was young. He was sharp. It wasn't perspiring all over the place like Nixon was. Nixon looked awkward. Optics mattered. But for the most part, these debates don't move the needle. Mitt Romney did not move the needle when he beat Barack Obama with that debate. That was a textbook response bias. Period. So here's the other argument to be made about why to keep Joe Biden, all right, on the ticket if you are the Democratic Party. All right. Not my favorite election forecaster, pundit, anything. I'll tell you that right now. But it is what it is. Oops.
Predicted 9 of the 9. This man has correctly predicted 9 of the last 10 elections using his own model of 13 criteria. Alan Lichtman is the distinguished professor of history at American University, and he looks at factors including incumbency, the economy, and social unrest. And in April, he was leaning toward Biden winning this election.
Let me just tell you, I am not a fan of Lichtman's model at all.
So let's see where he stands now. Alan, thanks for being here. What's your prediction?
I haven't made a final prediction, but I can tell you a lot about this election. First of all of these pundits and pollsters and analysts that you see on all the cable channels and all the networks have no track record in predicting elections. And yet they come on and they claim they know how this debate is going to affect the outcome of elections. They have no idea. It's sports talk radio. It may be entertaining, but it has no scientific basis.
So what is
Neither does he. I'm just saying right now, I'm telling you right now, his model is not a very, I don't like his model very much at all. I was a bigger fan of the primary model, but unfortunately he has not evolved, and he is not, when you see your model has shortcomings, you need to evolve and adjust for those shortcomings. There were situations, obviously, in 2020 where he predicted way too many electoral votes. It wasn't based in reality anymore. So, you needed to retool that model, and he didn't. But it was a very good model. Lichtman's model, Democrats love because it tends to favor Democrats when more so than not. All right. Now, whether or not he has been wrong, when she said the one that he missed was Bush v. Gore. He missed he's not a good model to predict realignments. And that's a struggle with modeling. So nobody's really that great in it, but he has shortcomings in his model when it comes to that. And he is, of course, lately I think, like so many others, polluted by his own biases. His projections in 2020 were ridiculous. And some of these models, when others go and look at them, find that if you're really using these variables to project the winner, to project the outcome, then you absolutely should not have that person as your projected winner, and yet they do. So 2020, for instance, made no sense. It really made no sense unless you take COVID into account. He didn't take COVID into account the way that this show has and the way we have always talked about it. He took it into account by fudging statistics, economic statistics, and policy change, what he calls policy change. Very, very subjective shit. All right. But anyway,
what is the impact?
This is a guy who's like he's frustrated that he's teetering on the verge of irrelevance and nobody really cares about what he has to say anymore.
Think.
Zero. Debates are not predictive of outcomes. Hillary Clinton won all 3 debates, still lost. John Kerry won all the debates, still lost.
That's not true. John Kerry lost the second debate, but okay.
Barack Obama got trounced 72 to 20% in the poll, worse than Biden.
Only the first debate. Barack Obama won the second and third debates. See what I'm saying with what he does? I'm talking about by the media poll standards. I'm not talking about my standards. He's cherry picking. Do you see what he's doing?
And went on to win. That's why we rely on the 13 keys which tap into
what
the
his model's called, keys
of how elections really work. And they show that Democrats' really only chance to win, contrary to everything you've heard, is with Biden running. Look at the incumbency key. Biden checks that off. The contest key, he checks that off. He was uncontested. It takes.
The problem with his modeling in this election is very simple. They are both former presidents. Incumbent charisma, challenger charisma, all right? But then number 3 is the incumbency. And even number 4, by the way, third party. These things suggest, even though I've argued third party is much more convoluted. The impact is much more convoluted than people suggest. And, Kennedy, for instance, is not, it's not a foregone conclusion that Kennedy is going to draw support from Biden instead of Trump. So it could end up Kennedy's not even on these damn ballots, and Jill Stein is drawing more support. So, to make that prediction now is a little bit crazy. But anyway, incumbency is kind of a moot point this time because they're both former presidents and they both have records. The strength of the incumbency, yes, comes from infrastructure, but it also comes from voters they're like adverse to risk. And if there is an incumbent that's doing a decent job, they don't typically like to give that challenger a chance to do a better job than the incumbent when they could buff it all up. So there's that part of it. And with these two men, they're both known quantities with records, and Joe Biden's record is seen as a failure. Donald Trump's record is now seen as a success, and it's not even close. So part of his variable, which is a very important variable in the Keys model, is like not wiped out, but at the very least, folks, it's in question. And he would argue there were no scandals in Biden's presidency. There are no scandals in Obama's presidency. This guy is a very subjective guy. He is not making it's sports talk radio. Coming from a guy who made the Trump administration scandalous over a hoax. Coming from the guy who ignored Burisma. What's he based it on? 51 intelligence officials saying that the laptop is propaganda. Go back and look. Go read his analysis from 2020. Go look at it. That is subjective.
6 keys to count out the White House party.
But
that means
Alan,
of the remaining 11 keys, 6 would have to fall. Let me finish.
Yeah.
Biden doesn't run.
Typical
They lose
know-it-all,
the
right?
contest key. They lose the incumbency, and only 4 more keys would have to fall.
I think that's actually kind of what I was trying to get at here, is that the problem right now is that the Democratic Party is considering replacing Biden, mostly because it's unclear whether or not he actually physically can carry out the rest of this campaign and put up a fight against his opponent. So that seems like a fundamentally different thing than some of the
What the hell you
items that
talking
you have
about,
in your
Alan?
rubric.
It's a huge mistake. They're not doctors. They don't know whether Biden is physically capable of carrying out a second term or not. Remember,
Do you hear this guy? They don't know. We're not doctors. You're stupid, folks. You're stupid. You're not a doctor. You're not capable of assessing what Biden is or is not capable of doing based on your own observations. You believe this friggin' schmuck? Some Real Clear Politics, by the way, if you want to see it. And that's why they put it up there. They always put up these noteworthy videos. Is this serious? So instead, we have to rely on the doctors Nancy Pelosi cited. Well, those doctors say that Trump has dementia, not Biden. This guy's insane. He just brought up the word science. This is not science. It's not even social science. It's not sound statistics. You're not a doctor. Typical friggin' know-it-all.
a lot of folks were saying the same thing about Ronald Reagan, who was,
oh my
73,
God.
and age was very different then. And they said,
and then Ronald Reagan turned to the debate in the second debate, which you say has no impact on elections, and he eviscerated Mondale with a witty, cute, sharp comment. I refuse to make age a factor in this election. I refuse to make my opponent's youth and inexperience a liability for him. And everybody laughed, and that was it. It was a wrap. I mean, this is just, I have a hard time getting through playing a video like this without stopping every 2 seconds and commenting. It's like when somebody is saying every sentence they're saying or they're making has an incorrect, statement in it or something.
He's not capable of carrying out another term. He won 49 states. So this is all foolhardy nonsense. The same pundits and pollsters who led us down the primrose path in 2016 are giving the Democrats horrible advice. This proves what I've been saying for years. Republicans have no principles.
Led us down the primrose path.
Democrats have no spine. Republicans are sticking with a blatant liar who lied for every 1 minute and 20 seconds of that debate. Donald Trump put out a lie. And by the way,
that's science. Does this sound like science to you? This man is irrational. This man is a liar. Why does anyone care about what he said? Joe Biden trotted out every single hoax that the Democrats have put before the American people in the era of Trump every chance he got. Every single chance he got. Notice he doesn't mention anything specific. And the biggest lie of all, the Russia hoax, which got the House Majority Whip and 4 others shot. The Very Fine People hoax, rioting. And what the hell is this guy? Does this sound like a rational, credible person to you? Alan Lichtman used to be, and his Keys model used to be. Folks, you can't go to a university and study statistics and political science in conjunction with each other and not hear of this man and not learn of his model. This is really sad. Him and Larry Sabato have lost their minds. They have lost their ability to think critically and to put their reason above their own emotions and their own biases.
Lies stick. Debate performances can be overcome. And now the first sign of adversity, the spineless Democrats want to throw under the bus
spineless.
Their own incumbent
They're trying to put
president.
their opponent in jail.
My goodness.
Well, I bet that's something that's different from what you've seen in those last 10 elections that you've been looking at. Alan Lichtman, thank you.
I mean, this is just totally outrageous. I don't even know what to say. Outside of what I already said. Does that at all sound like a credible, rational person to you? Wow. And by the way, you should check out Molly Hemingway's piece in the Federalist about who told the truth and who didn't. segment by segment. Listen, you're never going to get through a debate in which both candidates say things that are 100% true the entire time. It's just not going to happen. And there are things Trump said that I would not have advised him to say. I think sometimes he got hung up on not like trivial, but he made points that really weren't the larger points that he could have made. There's only one felon on this stage. Instead of saying, well, your own son's a felon, I would have said, you're putting all of my supporters in prison. You're jailing your dissent. You're a tyrant. And then 6 days later, when the Supreme Court agrees with you, you look a lot better. Your son's a felon thing is just like, I don't know. I mean, it would have been fine if you could have pivoted to it and moved on, but I don't recall anything Trump said that just wasn't true. There was something where he did make a mistake, and I think I'm like 90% sure I tweeted it and said, it's not quite that, it's this. But the point he was making wasn't a lie. He just used, and that's what Trump does. And Rush Limbaugh used to say, Trump supporters don't take him literally, they take him seriously. And that's a good explanation for it. Because he does make serious, legitimate points, and then sometimes the things that he say aren't literally true, but that's a lot different than just droning on when you're in between conversations where you can't speak, droning on about things that are just patently false. Donald Trump never said that there are very fine people who are white supremacists at Charlottesville. He never said that. That is a blatant lie. Hunter Biden's laptop was not Russian propaganda. That's a lie. Donald Trump did not collude with Vladimir Putin to interfere with the 2016 election. That is a lie. It's not even remotely true. I mean, there were tons of other ones too. He never called soldiers stupid or losers. He never called servicemen losers. That is a debunked lie from a shit rag magazine, The Atlantic. On and on and on. But Lichtman believes that. He surely believes that stuff. Listen to him. Too many of his keys are subjective. They're not objective. A good model has objective, predictive variables in them, not subjective garbage. And I just debunked like 5 of them right there as he was talking. And the power of the incumbency seems to be a very clear variable, simple to define, simple to weight, yet in this case, it is not. Both men were, in fact, have been presidents. Both men have records. Both men have infrastructure, universal name ID. There's a presidential bar you need to meet. Voters are assessing whether or not each one of these men has met that bar. One did, one did not. That's what the polls say. So you're killing a big chunk of that incumbency variable right off the jump. Right off the jump. All right. You know what? What time is it? 1:43. Let's do that. Let's read Mark's thing real quick because, again, think somebody like Lichtman is an old school, an older Democrat. He's certainly the Biden generation. I think that's fair to say. So he's a supporter of Joe Biden. You should not mistake him for being like an impartial election forecaster. He is a supporter of Joe Biden. That being said, even after everything we're about to read right now, I do think that he's right about one thing. At least Joe Biden is the president. Kamala Harris or anyone else that they could try to replace Joe Biden with if he were to step down. And his family wants him to keep going, by the way. Oh, no, that's not true. His family is split. That's the truth. The reports say his family wants him to keep going. It was his advisors led him down the wrong path. That's not entirely true. There are people in the Biden family. Everyone knows he has dementia. By the way, Joe Biden is right now enjoying her month's cover of Vogue magazine, having the time of her life. She'll run this guy into the ground. She don't give a shit as long as it's good for her. Goes to show you too, by the way, doesn't it? We had a first lady. We had a first lady who, forgive me for saying this, but it's just true. I'm not saying anything nobody knows. A slamming supermodel. And she wasn't put on the cover of any of these magazines. None of them. That really tells you everything we need to know about the media, which is really the topic of Mark's thing. I mean, these are just deceptive people. Anyway, Mark Hemingway at The Federalist, who, yes, is related to Molly Hemingway. That is her husband. Democrat media aren't upset Biden is senile. They're mad they can't hide it anymore. Had Democrats and the media been honest about how obvious Biden's condition was a year ago, they might have a winning candidate now. Richard Bookstaber, demon of your own design. Shortly after Biden's disastrous debate ended Thursday, Ben Rhodes tweeted, and this is why I teased this. I just didn't want to say what it was in case we got to this article. Ben Rhodes tweeted, just think about what the debate looked like to people and leaders around the world. Rhodes, a loyal Democrat soldier, was careful not to say that everyone was far more concerned about how the current president came off than Donald Trump. But he didn't have to. And by the way, that Bing was David Giglio talking about the people, like I said earlier in the show, who caved and pled in the Georgia case without even fighting. Even though some of them, like Jenna Ellis, raised $250,000 for her defense. She pled and is going to lose her law license anyway because, shocker, Democrats don't keep their deals, don't keep their promises and deals. She pled, agreed to flip on the president for nothing. The only one who really was in other trouble was Sidney Powell. That's the truth. I mean, there may be some stuff there for Sidney Powell that is different. But damn, everybody else, this case is in shambles. You didn't fight, took people's money. Now look at you. Besides the concern abroad over Biden's mental state wasn't exactly new. Just a few weeks ago, concern over Biden's adult appearance at the G7 summit was reported on unsparingly by foreign press without the repugnant, quote, don't believe your eyes and ears qualifications applied by the turnspits in the American media. The only reason anyone believed Biden was up to the job is that they were lied to, even though most Americans have always understood Biden has been exhibiting signs of dementia before he ever became president. At this point, it's impossible to deny that Democrats and their media allies have betrayed and endangered America by spending the last few years lying to us about Biden's age-related mental competency. Folks, what was it, last week? A week before the debate? When I showed you that tweet and they're like, well, Roosevelt had polio. And I responded to it as a media. Roosevelt was physically disabled. Biden is mentally disabled. Our country is in danger with a mentally disabled leader. Textbook turnspit right there. Of course, it's only fitting that Rhodes would come around, however circumspectly, to admitting that as far as Biden's concerned, the wheel's turning, but the hamster is dead. Rhodes is the boy wonder of the Obama White House, is chiefly famous for admitting in print that he openly manipulated reporters on behalf of the president, then Obama, to push the ill-advised Iran deal because the, quote, average reporter we talk to is 27 years old and their only reporting experience consists of being around political campaigns. That's a sea change. They literally know nothing, unquote. And he's right about that. Rhodes and his colleagues even bragged that certain reporters were so dedicated to helping them push their foreign policy narrative that they would just, quote, find everything and retweet it, unquote. God. While this admission was briefly scandalous, it was only notable because Rhodes had merely said out loud what everyone knew to be true. The Beltway press corps will print whatever Democrat politicians tell them to, no matter how outrageous or even dangerous for America's national security their policies are. That's the second half of that is far more important. Forget about how outrageous. That is different. Americans can see through that and they move on. Mark's point here, which is the point that I made Friday and why I was so heated, is that these people put us in peril. Danger. Physical danger. We have a senile, compromised, blackmailed, and extorted president in the White House. There was ample evidence. They knew it. Those who are not as stupid as that 27-year-old know nothing that now fills the hall of the press corps. There are others who knew it and they lied to the public anyway. Now, 14 Marines are dead. Countless Afghanis we left behind with empty promises are dead. Single mothers can't pay their freaking bills. 50,000 Chinese nationals pour across the border for some unknown reason every month, apparently. The economy could collapse like a house of cards tomorrow. Foreign-born residents are taking all of the net job gain positions in this country. And again, there are people in physical danger. Oh, not to mention the regime is persecuting and prosecuting and imprisoning their political opponents who say anything about it. All because of their lies. Indeed, in Thursday's debate, Trump would rightfully hammer Biden for turning on the money spigot to the world's leading state sponsor of terror after, oh, God, I forgot about that one. That's right. That's why you read them. After he turned it off during his presidency. Israeli women have been raped because of this lie, killed, children killed, elderly killed. This is on them. This is not media bias. This is corruption, and now they have blood on their hands. Naturally, Iran was flowing money to Hamas, which helped trigger the current war in Israel, as well as the Houthis, whom Biden took off the terror watch list almost as soon as he took office as a sop to their paymasters in Tehran. The Houthis have now spent months attacking ships in the Red Sea, exacerbating America's inflation woes, as well as causing major environmental disasters. Why? Because they're attacking oh man, what are they called? Oil man, the word is escaping me right now, guys. Not to mention we're losing the oil and it's being dumped into our oceans. It's coming up on Shark Week soon, by the way. It may even be Shark Week. Either way, National Geographic, for those of you who are like me, who love sharks, National Geographic always does a pivot thing too, or a parallel thing too. So Shark Attack Files is running like constantly, and if anyone's interested. But I am, because I consider myself a pro-environment guy. I love sharks. I love the ocean. I love marine life. I don't want to see people who don't give a shit about the world attacking oil riggers and dumping the oil all in the ocean. Not to mention, because that oil did not get here, we're paying more. And this is all because Joe Biden decided SREs were going to run out. Why? Because Trump killed the exemptions. You can't do business if they're on the sanctions list. Iran is on the sanctions list. You cannot buy oil from Iran. We don't care if you're our allies. We're not giving you special treatment and getting you to allowing you to buy and purchase cheap Iranian gas so they can fill their coffers and fund terrorism. Trump's the only president who did that. When they say they're doing sanctions, they're full of shit, folks. They're full of shit. They give them special exemptions, and they're still allowed to do business, and that's the way it goes. That's the way the real world works. Not under Trump. And they were bankrupt. Almost immediately, Iran's exports of oil hit an all-time low, and they were broke. There was no money to send to the Houthis. There was no money to send to Hamas. And by the way, if we wanted to kill the leaders of Hamas, everybody knows where they are, and it isn't the Gaza Strip. But the media largely shrugged when Obama started flying planes to Iran with hundreds of millions in cash, and Rhodes told them not to care about it. The media seemed to care even less when the Biden administration decided to give Iran access to $10 billion more a short time after they were responsible for killing American soldiers. Yet the media narrative that has been landed on following the debate, which is more a matter of consolation than accuracy, is that while Biden appeared frail and incompetent, his character still shined through, standing next to a serial liar like Donald Trump, who lied throughout the debate. Sound familiar? Lichtman even got on the talking points. Like I said, he could take his keys model and stick it up his old bias ass. Nothing he says is credible. Oh, and did we mention Donald Trump is a lying liar? He lies, you know. One need not defend Trump's aggrandizing rhetoric and personal peccadillos to acknowledge that it's not obvious to most voters that Biden is the better or more honest person. Indeed, Biden's own lies, immoral behavior, embrace of racist and foreign corruption with his felonious sex trafficker of a son, and don't forget his brother, are plenty egregious even by Washington standards. But for those who insist Biden is objectively more honest, particularly those in the media, here's a question they should have been forced to answer. What lie did Trump tell in Thursday's debate more damnable than Biden's claim that he's, quote, the only president this century, unquote, that did not have any troops, quote, dying anywhere in the world, unquote? Huge one. Huge one. Trump is the only one who has not started a war in modern memory, except for Nixon. Nixon didn't start shit. He was just ending it, trying to get out with a black eye, but at least our dignity and honor intact. Just because you have the CIA and NATO do all the dirty work does not mean you did not start a war. You started a war in Ukraine by toppling the guy. I was talking with my friend from Scotland the other day. He thinks, he knows, he's not stupid. He's not one of these people who just believe anything, but the coverage of Trump is so bad. The coverage of Democrats is so praising. It's ridiculous. It's very hard for anybody to get any real information. If you think it's bad here, it's awful in the EU. And anyway, he thinks, or he thought, that the idea that the CIA was behind the coup in Ukraine was a conspiracy theory. I had to explain to him that that is in congressional testimony. You could go read through the records of congressional testimony and learn all about it. He believed it was just a conspiracy you would hear from someone like Alex Jones. Just a few months ago, Biden's State of the Union address was interrupted by the screaming of the anguished father of one of the 13 service members who were killed in Biden's disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan. It was technically 14, but not all of them were. You're right. Yet this protest barely registered in the media. When we all know such a heart-trending display would be used as a cudgel against any Republican. And that's wholly aside from the fact that there's a merit to the argument that the reckless nature of the Afghanistan withdrawal means Biden bears real responsibility for their deaths. No, without a doubt. So does the media who lied to the public about Biden and during the entire 2020 campaign. Their deaths are on their hands. They all share that burden. When they die and the life review is happening with the welcoming committee, that shit is going to be front and center. Think you're getting away from that? Of course, don't expect anyone to acknowledge the real problem here. It's not just that voters are upset about Biden's debate performance or rightfully concerned the nation is in peril under his adult leadership. It's that they feel lied to. A week ago, the New York Times was regurgitating the White House spin that, quote, misleading videos are trailing Biden as he battles age doubts. As if the voluminous number of videos of Biden stumbling over his words and wandering off stage were all, quote, cheap fakes, per the White House talking points. Following the debate, At least 3 of their op-ed columnists call for Biden to withdraw, and the paper has run an official editorial telling him to bow out. The dwindling number of people who still trust legacy media outlets such as The Times will no doubt insist their willingness to call out Joe Biden's problems is a sign of their integrity. However, this would only be a sign of integrity if they have called him out, called for him to drop out after it became obvious Biden was senile, and that happened years ago. The about face occurred only after they started to panic that he couldn't win re-election. Besides, the fact that it's nearly impossible to recall another time when any big elitist media institution diverged with the Democratic White House on such a big issue is the exception that proves the rule. Biden may yet withdraw, but if he doesn't, he need not worry whether the media will line up behind him. Following Biden's debate catastrophe on MSNBC, Jen Psaki asked California Governor Gavin Newsom, what should people out there who have been social media platforms like President Biden be pushing out there that was damaging and terrible from Donald Trump tonight? And by the way, it's not how I read it. That statement partially doesn't make much sense, but it's a colloquially written statement because she asked him during the interview. To be clear on what's happening in this exchange, a woman who went straight from being the current president's press secretary to joining a major news network with no objection from her peers is asking Biden's official debate surrogate how to send out literal talking points to damage the incumbent president's opponent on live television. It's remarkable. It's not just that the debate made it impossible to deny Biden's cognitive decline. It's that the media's desperation to defend him is also laying bare the total moral and ethical collapse of journalism. It's tempting for Trump supporters to revel in the I don't like Schadenfreude over this mess because Trump, who's been leading in the polls since September, just saw his odds of winning jump even more. And the down ballot effects for Dems of a lopsided victory could be devastating. But the reality is that there's no good outcome for the country. Democrats have spent years insisting Trump and the Republican Party were a threat to democracy because of January 6th. But that threat may pale in comparison, having a non-compost Mentis man in the White House with 2 separate wars raging involving a nuclear power. If distrust between voters and our leadership class was already a problem, it's going to get worse. I'll read this real quick. Even if Democrats do try to hot swap the candidate in the middle of the election, Kamala Harris has the lowest approval ratings of any vice president in modern history. And the process for substituting any other candidate would likely cause so much strife within the Democratic coalition and legal turmoil that it would swallow the election. You think 2020 was divisive because people question the results? Just imagine heading into this election with active litigation about whether it's against the law to take Biden's name off the ballot in crucial swing states a couple of months before the election. I'll tell you right now, he's not getting on Ohio. They take Biden off the ballot in Ohio. Kamala Harris is not, her names won't even appear on that ballot. It didn't have to be this way. All Democrat leaders and the media had to do was not be so craven in their desire to cling to power. In fact, they had been so honest about how obvious Biden's condition was a year ago, they might have a candidate who was winning the election. They might. Instead, they sowed distrust with citizens, empowered enemies who were taking advantage of an unfeebled leader, and brought the country to the brink of a domestic turmoil. And still, they have no intention of accepting responsibility for what they've done. They're not actually upset to have just discovered the man in charge of our nuclear weapons is senile. They're upset they can't continue to hide this fact from you any longer. Could have been taken right off the introduction of Inside the Numbers on Friday. Perfectly worded, Mark. Honestly, doesn't get any more on the nail than that. Doesn't. That's it. Don't forget, if you like the videos, don't forget to like them. Smash that like button. All right. And subscribe. About 2/3 of you are not subscribed and watch the show. So don't forget to hit that subscribe button. If you're on YouTube, it would be greatly appreciated if you would mosey on over to Rumble and subscribe and like there as well. It takes a minute of your time and it really is helpful. Not just for sponsorships, but of course for algorithms and everything. They got theirs just like YouTube has theirs as well. It's that still applies. Of course, the best place to follow us, folks, is right there. peoplespundit.locals.com, peoplespundit.locals.com. Poll was started to field yesterday. It will feel today as well. Hopefully we'll wrap it up by tomorrow, and we'll have some early results to at least peek at on Wednesday. But don't quote me on that. But that's the goal. All right. And very interested to see what those results are. Thank goodness Locals is up and going. Thanks for bearing with us on that. And tomorrow I'll be on Dr. Steve. Tomorrow I'll be on Dr. Steve Turley. Very much looking forward to that. So keep your eye on my Locals and social media to make sure that you get that interview. You get to see that interview. We're going to have a tremendous time because I was kind of saving it for Dr. Steve anyway. I'll put this in the chat for you guys. I can do it on YouTube, and I can do it on Locals, and I can do it on Rumble. Actually, Locals, I already shared it with you, but I'll do it again. Article in Bloomberg about Marine Le Pen. This is, we'll probably circle back to this on Friday because I really feel I'll try to get her, but usually they block me. Oop, they let it go. We'll probably circle back to this on Wednesday or Friday because I think it's very important. And certainly Dr. Turley and I will be talking, Dr. Steve and I will be talking about it because this is like happening in so many places. Failed political class, Mark was just talking about. They can't govern. They're not governing well. And that's been the case for a long time from multiple major parties. Now those parties are essentially failing. And this populism is on the rise everywhere because of it. If they just did their job and listened to grievances, there wouldn't be people like Marine Le Pen. There wouldn't be people like Donald Trump if they were good governors and stewards of the country that they are in charge of. But they're not. And it's a plague throughout the West. And this is what is happening. All right. There it is. Nothing but love for you guys. And we will see you on, Locals, I'll see you in a bit as always. But we'll see you on Wednesday if you don't check out those shows. Thanks for watching Inside the Numbers. We'll see you, folks, when we see you. Deuces!